All right, well, hi everybody. I'm thankful for my Savior Jesus, who helps me to face and have victories over a lot of my fears, and I'm still working on and facing and dealing with my PTSD, and my name is Tanya. Hey everybody, so you're probably wondering why I'm up here since I just taught last week. This was Digger's turn, and you know what he decided to do? Leave town. So guess what? You're stuck with me 2 weeks in a row, so sorry, not sorry. But I will tell you this, don't worry, because I'm going to try to be a little more serious tonight than last week with my cat, cuddles, rejection examples that I gave you last week. It was a serious issue, as you could tell, if you were here and saw my inventory sheets. Now, if you did miss it, it was kind of a basic introduction class on how to fill out those sheets. I wonder, this might help to hear me too. I'm with it tonight, yeah.
That's awesome.
What? Okay. I just need help. What can I say? That's why I'm here. Anyway, so last week I did that example, and I had fun with it because when you're in your 12 steps, which a lot of you are, when it comes time to do your inventory, especially when it's your first time, it can be really scary. You can feel like you don't know what you're doing. It could cause and set off a lot of anxieties or fears for you. So I try to have some fun with it to ease some of that fear or tension you might be feeling about approaching that, because I know a lot of you are coming up to that in your 12 steps right now. So I hope that helped. And as a matter of fact, if you weren't here last week and you want the handout packet I gave out last week that explained some of the basics and gave you my example, they're on the back table back there, so feel free to grab them when you leave tonight, because I know not everybody could make it last week, so be sure to do that. But I did forget to do one thing, and that was to give you guys some disclaimers last week when I gave you my lesson. And so the first one is, no, because I can't tell you how many emails I got, you do not need to write an inventory sheet on your pets. Okay? I'm just saying it right now. Pets are not what you're writing about. It's people. People. And the second thing I should have gave you a disclaimer of is that you do not need to show proof of the offenses by the people, like I did with my cats, showing you proof of how they reject me because they love my husband more than me. So I provided you proof of that. So you do not need to provide proof of any evidence by pictures for your sponsor or for when you do your testimony or anything like that, okay? So I just thought I should throw those 2 disclaimers out there just in case, because of all the emails and text messages I was getting asking me about that. Just thought I'd clear that up tonight. So anyway, so hopefully you're prepared, and it was great to hear Alexis already starting and tackling her sheets. I hope many of you are doing that or getting ready to, or maybe you're making your list right now as you're preparing. But in any case, it's a big part of this journey, and it's where you're going to learn so much about yourself, and what God is wanting to show you is when you dive into those inventory sheets. And tonight's lesson, which is the sponsor's lesson, is just as important and a big part that goes with our inventory process, because we should never ever begin writing our inventories without having a sponsor first. Because when we begin to write them for the first time especially, it's going to bring up a lot of emotions, pain, losses, good and bad experiences that we're going to have to revisit. It's necessary. You don't have to stay there and live there. You don't have to camp out there, but you do have to visit there. And that can be really hard. And so this part of the journey, sometimes if we're not careful when we're working on our inventory sheets, we can get stuck in obsessing over the details of one person or one event we went through for way too long, and that can just take us down a deep, dark hole into despair. So it's so important that we have a sponsor that we find ourselves in that place, we can reach out to them, we can call them, and they can help us talk us off the ledge and bring us back in and get us back going, moving forward in our inventory process, and get us unstuck from visiting and staying stuck, or maybe helping us to see that we're staying stuck on one person or a problem or thing that has happened way too long. So I hope after tonight, if you do not have a sponsor, I'm going to alleviate any concerns as we go through this lesson, and that it's going to help you understand the value having a sponsor adds to your recovery progress. So no matter who you are, no matter what you've been through or whatever you've done, I just can't express enough the importance of having a sponsor during this time. So we're going to first jump in and go over tonight's principles and steps and corresponding verses. But before we do that, if everybody got a handout, great. If you didn't, they're on the back table, or you raise your hand. Gary can bring you one. But everybody will need a handout so you can follow along. There's some fill in the blanks. But the first principle that goes with tonight's lesson is principle 4, openly examine and confess my faults to myself, to God, and to someone I trust. Happy are the pure in heart, Matthew 5:8. And then it goes with step 4, which is make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And the corresponding scripture for that is, let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord, Lamentations 3:40. And I truly believe, after going through and being in CR for the number of years I have been, that there's no better way to examine and test oneself so we can sort out what we're struggling through than by using your inventory sheets. That tool is so valuable, not only. And just a quick reminder, and then I'll move on and stay focused on sponsor. But when you do your inventories, it's not the only time you use the inventory sheet. You should continue to use it throughout your journey. If you're going to continue applying the steps and principles, you keep using those inventory sheets to help you sort through your struggles, so you can understand it and allow God to work in you and help you see what's going on with you and what you need to do. So that's how valuable this tool is and how powerful it is, and why so much time is spent on it and talking about it, and classes are just focused on that one thing. So it's so important and it's so valuable. It's helped me so much over the years to be able to use that tool. So before we get into tonight's acronym on how to pick a sponsor, what you need to look for when you're going to ask somebody to be your sponsor, I'm going to go over some frequently asked questions when it comes to this topic about sponsors. And the first question we get a lot is, what is the difference between a sponsor and an accountability partner? Because you are asked when you're in a 12-step to have both. And I'm going to first explain the sponsor, because the sponsor is someone who has completed all 4 12-step participant guides. They have completed their inventories, they have read them to their sponsors, and they have written and read their full testimonies here at CR. Then once they do that, they take the leadership training, and after that, they get one of these little fancy-dancy badges, and this is how you know somebody can be a sponsor. So when you go to share groups, when you come into CR, you see somebody wearing this, you know somebody has already done it, completed it, and they can be a sponsor. So this is how you can identify them. And I think these are pretty sweet. I think I made a pretty nice looking badge for you guys to wear. So, hey, nobody can resist. But anyway, that's how you identify who those people are. Now, accountability partner, that can be anybody. And I would encourage you to have one from within the CR program, preferably from your own 12-step group or a share group that you're joining in and you go to each week. I find it's the easiest way to do this. This helps us because we will see each other each week. We get to know each other through our study or share groups. And remember, the thing that's the main job of accountability partner is their backup support. You can't reach your sponsor, you call your accountability partner. They're there to encourage you and to pray for you. And one of the things I want to stress that is not the job of accountability partner or a sponsor is to try to fix you or your problems. So if you're looking for or hoping that somebody's going to do that, it's time to add a professional counselor to working your program here. That we're not counselors, we're not therapists here, your sponsors, accountability partners aren't. We're here for support, encouragement, and not to fix one another. So I just wanted to make sure I stress that to you. And I can't express enough the importance of having both a sponsor and accountability partner. Because when I was in my second 12-step that I did years ago, which I happened to be leading by myself because we didn't have enough leaders back then to have 2 leaders per 12-step group, which is what CR recommends. So I was leading alone, and then I agreed to sponsor 2 ladies in my group who had also decided to be each other's accountability partners. So I thought, okay, this should be good and work out. But midway through this 12-step, this is when I found out my husband had cancer. And so the ladies at that time were also in the middle of writing their inventories. And I had to shut down our meeting for about a month because I didn't have a co-leader who could keep the group going and meeting in my absence because I had to deal with my husband's health. So the problem for the 2 ladies I was sponsoring was they needed my input on their inventories. I wasn't available. But the good news is they reached out to each other because they were accountability partners, and they called each other during that time, which was a good thing. And they prayed for, encouraged each other, and helped each other as they tried to navigate filling out those sheets the best they could. And they were patient with me. And then when I got back, I just got together and resumed our meetings and resumed my meetings with them and helped them finish it up. But that's the power and how important it is. As a matter of fact, I won't even sponsor anybody who does not have an accountability partner. I know I can't be relied on 100% of the time. And I know I need to know my sponsees have an accountability partner because I want to know they have somebody else. If they need to talk and they're struggling and they can't reach me, they can call the accountability partner and talk to them. So another question I get asked a lot is, why is a sponsor and accountability partner even necessary or important? Why does CR say we need to have this? Well, the first reason is it's biblical. And this is at your first year fill-in on your sheets there, handouts. Ecclesiastes 4:9-12 says, two are better off than one, because together they can work more effectively. If one falls down, the other can help him up, but if someone is alone, there is no one to help him. Together, we're stronger and more effective in helping each other on our journeys. Otherwise, we're going to set ourselves up to be alone with our struggles and thoughts, and that is a really bad place to be. It's not where we want to find ourselves. And I get it, that it can be scary to ask someone to be your sponsor, especially if you struggle with rejection, trust, or abandonment issues. We're going to fear that the other person might say no, so we won't want to try. And I'll be honest, that was me before I joined my very first 12-step. I was scared to death. The thought of having to ask somebody to be my sponsor and fearing them saying no kept me for a year just coming to the big group meetings, going to share groups, and I still got a lot out of that, but because of my trust issues, I struggled with wanting to ask somebody to be my sponsor. And so, and I'm sorry, I accidentally hit my mouse and lost my place. Here we go. So with that, my abandonment was so we feared them saying no, so we didn't try. So that was me. So, and my first issue that I worked on in my first 12-step was fear of abandonment. And that was, so here I am working on that, and I'm having to ask somebody to be my sponsor. Well, thankfully, God brought somebody who was a gal who was actually a leader of another 12-step group. She came here to share testimony with our group, and she was also a pastor's wife. And so I related on so many levels to her journey, to her story, and the things that she's gone through in her life that I just felt compelled afterwards. I knew that was who I wanted as my sponsor. And so you want that. That's what you want. You want to have somebody that you feel like you can relate to, things, similar experiences that they may have gone through that you have or gone through or are going through. So that's so important. And she said yes, so I was so thankful she did. But I had to take the risk. It's part of the journey. So I just want to encourage you not to give up on asking. And if the first person says they can't, go ask somebody else. Another question I get asked a lot is, can your spouse be your sponsor accountability partner? And aren't they cute? Had to get my cats in there. Now, I will say I love my husband a lot, but spouses should not be your sponsors or accountability partners. As a matter of fact, in CR, it's a requirement. They ask you to have sponsors accountability partners that are the same sex as you, so men with men, women with women. Now, I love that I can talk about different discoveries I'm making in my recovery or aspects of my recovery with my husband if I'm comfortable and wanting to. So that's your big clue there. Want to. If you're comfortable, don't pressure your spouse. If they don't want to talk about recovery, you don't make them. But I like that we can have those conversations and talk about what God's showing us. But I've also learned that it's way better for me to reach out to my sponsor when I'm struggling than my spouse. Because our spouses, they're just too close to us emotionally, and they're not going to always be able to be objective, and they may want to try to fix us or our pain. And I know it may be more convenient or feel easier to talk to our spouses about our journey and how we're doing rather than reaching out and having to make the time to reach out to another person. But learning to reach out is a critical part of this journey. Learning how to reach out to somebody when you're struggling is a critical part of what we are learning. And that's one of the tools that we're learning here in CR, because that's what gets us in trouble is we try to keep doing things in our own power. And this is making us reach out to ask for help. Plus, sometimes your sponsors need to speak truth to us and tell us things we don't really like, things we don't really want to hear. And we might get mad or be upset for a few minutes. And I can say, I would rather feel that towards my sponsor than my spouse. So I just want to encourage you, don't add strife into your recovery by relying on a spouse for either of those roles. Another question is, and the last one is, what do I do if my sponsor quits the program or moves away? And it's going to happen. As a matter of fact, it's happened to me on multiple occasions. As a matter of fact, I've had 5 sponsors in the last 11 years that I've been in the CR program. And so here's what you do. If they move away, this is me, I would tell them I want to stay in touch and be friends, but as far as sponsoring goes, I will strongly encourage you to find another sponsor that is here each week, who will notice that you are here each week, and who you can easily touch base with because you see each other here. It's so easy So easy to fall into the trap to let your recovery slide. If your sponsor's not here, you know they don't know that you're not here. They don't know if you're not going or attending your meetings. And so it's so much easier and better for you to keep you accountable to working the program if you have somebody in the program that's here each week, that whether it's accountability partner and sponsor. Now, if your sponsor quits the program and leaves it, then reach out to them. Encourage them to come back, but immediately go find yourself another sponsor. You do not wait. You just go and do it. And the great thing is, our CR has been up and running for so many years now. We have a ton of men and women who could sponsor you. So we have plenty of people to be sponsors, plenty of people that are wearing these necklaces that you can find and ask to sponsor you. Years ago, when we first started this CR, we had to go to other churches to find our sponsors. It's not impossible, but it was a lot more work. And for somebody like me with major trust issues, that was really hard. If that lady didn't come speak at my church, I was going to go seek her out at her church. So I was fortunate that she happened to come over. But my first sponsor moved away. And because of that, she ended up quitting the program because the new church her husband was working at didn't have a CR program. So I had to seek out a new one. And I want to tell you, I've had sponsors younger than me, older than me, same age as me. Age doesn't matter. It's about relating to their journeys. And that's what you're looking for when you're listening to people share. Can you relate? When you hear people give their testimonies, do you relate? Does it draw you in? Does it speak to you? Do you want the recovery that they have when you hear them talking about it, when they're sharing about it? So with that being said, those are our frequently asked questions. Now we're going to jump into tonight's acronym, where we're going to go over the qualities we should be looking for when we ask somebody to be our sponsor. Now, the first letter in your acronym of what we should be looking for is somebody who's an example of a servant leader. Sponsors should not be dictators. They should be leading from the freedom they've experienced and living out the steps and principles. Your sponsor should be someone who isn't trying to fix your life or tell you what to do. They should be attempting to draw from their own experiences on what God taught them or showed them when they were struggling like you are now. And this is how we learn to lead from a healthier place. It's not the sponsor's job to fix your problems, but they can be there to listen, encourage you that you can make it through, and they can pray for you. And this is the best way to sponsor can serve you. As according to Mark 10:45, it says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." And sponsors serve by being a good listener, open about their own struggles, and trying not to fix you. The next letter in the acronym is P for power, comes from God and not from the sponsor. We need to keep our relationships healthy. And as a sponsor, it's important to make sure we are giving godly advice that directs our sponsees back to the principles and steps that are based off of God's word. And that is what we are here helping each other to do. Practice seeking God for answers, gaining support from our sponsors and accountability partners as we work on changing our addictions and compulsive behaviors as directed by God through this process for new ways to think, act, and live. The next, in 1 Corinthians actually 2:5 says, "So that your faith might not rest on human wisdom, but on God's power." We may not totally ever get or understand how by God's power we are changed if we are willing to surrender and follow the process. But all I can tell you is he does it, and we hear about it every time we hear another testimony up here on our stage. Anytime I've taken the power back or tried to rely on my own wisdom, I always fail. The next letter in our acronym is O for open to share the recovery journey. Yep, sponsors need to be transparent and share from their recovery experiences, just like the guy in the slide. Yeah, remember? Yep. They're supposed to share from their difficulties and their experiences, people, and they show how they've been working their recoveries by sharing about it with you, and it can help save you pain from going down the wrong trail if you're willing to listen to the journey that they have been on and what God showed them. Sponsors need to be sharing about their own failures, their struggles, their victories in life while being on this journey. Their openness encourages us to be open and helps us to feel safe and to be willing to listen. We need to notice, are they applying the steps and principles to their journeys when they share? Can you hear how this program is helping them? Are they sharing in such a way that you want what they have? Proverbs 10:9 says, "Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes a crooked path will be found out." If you're looking for perfection, you're not going to find it. Instead, you need to look for someone who admits to and owns their struggles, their failures, and their victories, as this is going to demonstrate their desire to walk in integrity. The next letter in the acronym is N, non-judgmental. Our role as a sponsor is not to judge those we sponsor, but to guide them by encouraging them and by challenging them. Sponsors are to be role models of how not to judge. But I'm going to get real here because some of us have done some really dumb, scary, or foolish things that we regret. And when you are preparing to share them with your sponsor, you may wonder if they will still accept you after you share. I want you to keep in mind that your sponsor had to go through this too when they did theirs for the first time. And they understand how important and vital it is to not judge. They had to face the same challenges with their own sponsor the first time they went on this journey. So keep in mind, you're not alone. They had to do the same. They understand the value and importance of not judging. And this is why we like to remind everybody, CR is a judgment-free zone here. We won't feel safe to come clean if we don't feel safe to open up and not be judged. It's a critical part of our journey here to give others this opportunity to grow and change, but it's not going to happen if we think we're going to be judged when we come in the doors here. The next letter in our acronym is S, and it's still growing in their relationship with God. Sponsors need to be living out of principles 7 and 8 on a daily basis. They need to be active in their own recoveries. Pick someone who you see at CR regularly and in share groups, who's open and sharing about themselves and who you feel encouraged by, making you feel what you want, they have what you want what they have, and that they're coming, they're working, they're expressing it, they're talking about it. Colossians 1:10 says, "Then the way you live will always honor God and please the Lord, and your lives will produce every kind of good fruit. All the while you will grow as you learn to know God better and better." They're not going to be perfect, but if they're making progress, speaking of the fruit that is growing in their own life as they're seeking God for answers through the CR program, then they are still growing and could be a great choice. The next letter in the acronym is O for objectivity. And getting too close to the individuals we sponsor can develop into an unhealthy relationship where we'll have a hard time separating ourselves from their problems. Part of a sponsor's job is to help guide you, but to guide you to God for the answers as they share about how God helped them. They can also share if they think you're on the right track, give input if you're off track, help you with insights through your inventory process, and they also help you with the writing of your testimony. And that is why choosing a sponsor wisely is so important, because we need to put ourselves with people that are going to challenge us to do better. And then with your sponsor, you're going to find out and discover there's a weaning process in the relationship with them. At first, every sponsor is different, but at first, some of you might be meeting weekly or bi-weekly with your sponsor, whatever you two agree to. But over time, it's going to spread out, the meetings. They could be once a month or they could be bi-monthly. And then eventually, by the time you finish your 12-step, you're going to find out you're on call. The sponsor's on call. You are to reach out to them when you need them, because that's why the weaning process is happening. So instead of waiting for the next meeting to get together with your sponsor and talk to them, now you have to reach out if you need to talk to them. That's why we wean and get you off of being dependent on your sponsor and more dependent on God, seeking God, reaching out to the sponsor for that support you need. And to maybe you filled out an inventory sheet. Maybe you just want verification that am I on the right track? Does this sound right? Do you think this is what God's leading me to do? And so it's then goes on call where you reach out as needed. And it's an important part to reach out for help when we're struggling, as we've learned, as you guys will hear throughout the year as we work on going through the lessons. 1 Thessalonians 4:12 says, "So that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders, and so that you will not be dependent on anybody." I just want to remind you that we're here to grow and learn how to grow our dependence to be more on God and less on ourselves or others. Now, the last letter in our acronym for tonight is R for reachable. Sponsors need to be available for the individuals they sponsor. We need to be there when the individuals we're sponsoring are going through a crisis or are about to relapse. But if you can't reach your sponsor on a regular basis, you need to find a different one. And don't take it personal if you get fired as a sponsor. I've been fired as a sponsor, and it's part of the journey. Sometimes the person we start with is not the person we end with, and that's okay. I have never taken it personal, and I've really appreciated when sponsees have let me know. It makes me feel better to know they have another person they can reach out to for help and guidance. because I know my life is crazy, and I know sometimes I can't meet the needs of the ladies that I have agreed to sponsor. But on the flip side of that, if you aren't reaching out to your sponsor or following the requested guidelines in your sponsor's contract, they can fire you as a sponsee as well. If your sponsor gives you a contract, or if you're not coming to meetings, that's another one. You're not coming to meetings, but you're calling up your sponsor all the time, that's a reason that a sponsor can fire you, because they're going to think you're not working the program if you're not showing up. So if your sponsor gives you a contract, which I always do when I sponsor anybody, be sure to read it thoroughly, ask any questions you might have before you commit to working with them. 2 Timothy 2:2 says, "And the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others." I just can't encourage you enough to make sure who you ask to sponsor you, that they have the time to give you that you feel you need, and that you're willing to listen to their valuable input, be challenged, and know God is taking you on a big journey of self-discovery. So that is it for tonight. And if you're in a 12-step and haven't found a sponsor yet, start listening in your share groups and start asking. And remember, if they say no, ask somebody else. Don't let that put you off. Don't take it personal. Some sponsors might already be at their capacity. You might be behind the 8 ball if you haven't asked yet already. And most sponsors know their capacity of how many people they feel they can realistically handle. So they may have to tell you no, and be glad that they do, so you don't end up firing them because they don't have the time for you that you need. So you just move on to the next person. I believe that's how God leads us to who we should have as a sponsor. If somebody says no to me, then that's not who God meant for me to be with. There's somebody else I need to be with. And that's okay. Move on and keep asking till God leads you to the right person that says yes. So with that, there is a home application on there, or you can use it in your share groups if you want a few questions, but they're really only going to be applicable if you don't have a sponsor yet. If you want to use those tonight, you can. But with that, let's go ahead and stand, say the Serenity Prayer so we can head out to share groups.